Have you ever interviewed anybody? Well, you need to if you're going to work on your family history. And we'll talk about that in 5 seconds. Hi, I'm Greg Kleist, and I'm your host for The Road to Your Family History. Welcome. We're going to talk about interviewing your relatives, but before we get started, please, if you get a chance, go below there, hit the subscribe button, and hit the like button, because that'll tell Google and me that you want to see more of these videos. So I'd be glad to do them for you, and I really appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, let's get down to business. Now, hopefully you've already done your self-interview, which I'll put a link to that video down below, and there should be a link up here too in the corner here. So if you haven't seen that video yet, please go take a look at that, because that's the very first thing you need to do. Then you can start interviewing your family relatives, and we'll talk about that. So, okay, maybe you're saying, Greg, I can't interview people. I'm not Barbara Walters. Now, if you don't know who Barbara Walters is, she was a woman who was very well known for interviewing famous people. She would have actually primetime specials where she would interview some very famous people, whether they're famous politicians, athletes, actors, musicians, you name it. If they were a big name in any field, she would be interviewing them. And she'd have a special, primetime special, maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 times a year, depending on what year it was. She doesn't do them anymore, but she was well known for interviewing people. Of course, she'd have lights set up and cameras and microphones. Now, are you going to have to do that? Well, no, not really. When I say interviewing your family, I'm not talking about that, although there could be instances where you might want to use some of those, but we'll talk about those in other videos. When I say interviewing your family relatives, I'm just saying that it's not an informal discussion where you just sit down and start talking about family history. When you interview someone, you need to be prepared, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Now, how are you going to be prepared to talk to your family relatives about the family history? Well, the very first thing you need to do is make a list of people that you can interview about your family history. Now, I want you to write this down. I want you to write down every living relative that you know of that you might interview to get information from. Now, it doesn't matter if you think that they'll have useful information for you or not about your family history. Write them down, and write down specific names. Don't just write down grandma and grandpa, because you might have more than one grandma and grandpa anyway, but write down their names. And once again, it doesn't matter whether you think they have useful information or not. It doesn't matter whether they live near you or are very far away. You need to make this list. Write down parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers and sisters, and if you're real lucky, maybe great-grandparents even. Boy, that'd be great. Listen, so make this list, because it's going to be very important, and it's where you need to start in getting prepared to interview your family relatives. Now, once again, when we're talking about interviewing people, don't get wrapped around that word interview. Once again, it's just being prepared, because it's going to make your life that much easier, and you're going to be able to accomplish a whole lot more. Now, if you're more advanced in years, okay, maybe like me, your list might not be as long as someone's who's younger, because younger people are going to have more living relatives. But no matter what your age is, write down the living relatives' names. Now, you're just going to work with what you have. Like I said, it might not be a long list. That's okay. We can work with that. Okay, so now that you have your list, you're going to decide who you need to interview first. Now, families are dispersed nowadays all over the place, all over the United States, maybe even all over the world. But are the people closest to you physically going to be the first ones you interview? Well, they might be, but my suggestion is to interview the oldest members of your family first. Hey, I realize that any of us could leave this earth at any time. But, odds are better that older family members are going to be the ones to go first. So play the odds and make them at the top of your list. You want to make sure you get the knowledge that these older family members have before they're no longer around. because they have just an incredible amount of knowledge about your family that you're going to find just incredibly useful as you go about your research. Don't let them leave this earth without mining that activity, getting that information from them so you can preserve it and share that information with future generations. You don't want that knowledge that they have to be gone forever, because believe me, that information they have, if you don't get it before they go, it could take you a long, long time to find out that information, if you ever find it at all. So please, talk to those older people. So, who do you put next on your list of people to interview? Well, once again, try to stick with the older relatives. The older they are, the sooner you should interview them. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we'll accomplish that and whether it should be in person, by phone, over the internet, all those different things. We'll talk about those in another video.